Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday morning, and welcome to week one of the I Am online experience. My name is Michelle Cachat. Hopefully, you know me by now, and I am so glad you're here. It is such a privilege to have you joining in with me on this whole journey together. It will be quite an experience. Already just in the last 24 hours, reading your comments and your stories have been absolutely thrilling. And gosh, I already feel like I'm getting to know you better. Hold on just a second. I'm going to walk here. You guys get to see this in progress as we're doing here. All of a sudden I realized I left my phone and I need to have that for, good morning, Wendy. So good to see you. So you guys get to see me walking through my house. Good morning, Michelle. Good to see you too. The 1L Michelle friend. All right. So let's get started. First of all, in just a few moments, I'm going to dive into the content for today. Good morning, Karen. But before that, I just want to kind of go over the 6 teaching lessons and what it's going to be all about. So the whole book, for those of you who have glanced through the book, is divided into 6 parts. So there's part 1, creation, part 2, Exodus, part 3, covenant, part 4, presence, part 5, rescue, and part 6, revelation. Those 6 parts of the book are basically the highlights of the overall narrative of the Bible. My firm conviction is that the more that we understand the gospel, the heart of the gospel, the more that we know ourselves and the more anchored we are in who we are. I mentioned this yesterday on the video that I did yesterday, but we are only as strong as our roots are deep. We are only as strong as what we attach ourselves to, what we wrap ourselves around. And good morning, Jessica. And so we have to, I have discovered that throughout the course of my life, I have wrapped my sense of significance and value around my accomplishments, my achievements, my career, my talents, my appearance. Now, if you would have asked me, I would have said, no, my sense of identity wasn't based on any of those things. However, after experiencing some of the hard pieces of life over the last 10 years or so, I had to face the reality that so much of my identity was rooted in those things because those things were taken away and I didn't know who I was. And so I had to get back to the basics. And what God has been teaching me is that you and I, we need to have our identity rooted in something outside ourselves. We have to have our sense of ourselves that's based and grounded on something greater and bigger and stronger than what we are. And ultimately what that comes down to is the gospel, the message of the Bible. That is where our anchor is. That is our hope. So those 6 parts of the book are really what we want to get back to. Good morning, Heather. That's what we want to get back to as we recapture a sense of who we really are, that who we are really is based on who he is. And that's what we need to know. So today we're going to do the first part of our story. So the first part of our story is creation, and that's where we're going to begin. One more time, as I've mentioned before in other Facebook Live videos, the more you interact and comment and talk, first of all, it's more fun for me because I love to see that you're there. Just rather than me sitting at home doing this by myself, then I get to know that you guys are actually there and we're doing this together. But the other piece is, and there's all kinds of science behind this, but as humans, when we interact with what we're reading and talking about and studying, it plants itself deeper in our hearts and our minds. It becomes not just something that we're watching from a distance, but it becomes an experience. Hey there, Sarah. That's why this whole thing is called the I Am online experience, because I want more for you than for you just to watch a show. I want you to interact with the content and truly be different as a result. So interact with me. Let me know what is standing out to you, but also interact with these other. We have almost 700 people now in this Facebook group that are doing this study together. I counted up this morning, we have more than pardon me, more than 10 countries represented. And so we're doing this all together, all of us from around the world doing this together. Wendy says that it's hard to click and react when she's taking so many notes. I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And you are welcome to take notes. By the way, one more thing, make sure you have your book handy. You can write in this book. There is nothing wrong with actually writing in a book. So use your highlighter, your pen, make notes for yourself for the future. You could use your journal. I also gave you guys those free journal sheets branded for this study. Those are free. You can download and print off as many of those as you want to keep taking notes. But I cannot urge you strong enough. You need to interact with this. This needs to be something that you are experiencing and interacting with and walking out, because the more that you do that, the more that it will change you from the inside out. This is not something that you can watch from a distance and be different as a result of. You have to join in and step into it. All right. So you guys know some of my story. Hopefully you read the introduction of the book, so you get a background of my story. But the very fast Cliff Notes version is, I've had a lot of unexpected circumstances in my life, including a divorce very early on, becoming a single mom, which I never wanted, never dreamed of, never anticipated. That was devastating for me. Then I remarried a wonderful man named Troy who had 2 boys himself, and we started something called the blended family. Hello, any of you out there that have a blended family, a step family, it is not the Brady Bunch. So let's just be really clear about that. That was its own challenge and really did a number on my sense of identity and sense of self. And then in the middle of all of that, about 10 years into that, I was diagnosed with cancer for the first time, cancer of the tongue. They caught it early. We thought it was going to be a simple deal, cut it out, recover, put cancer on a shelf, never see it again. But the problem is it came back 2 more times, early 2014, late 2014. The last time was far more aggressive and serious. In fact, at that point, the doctors didn't make me any guarantees of a long life. I had a 9-hour surgery where they removed 2/3 of my tongue, as well as all kinds of incisions on my arm and my leg, and I had a tracheostomy for 6 weeks. I had a feeding tube for 5 months. I was literally on the brink of death for months and had no guarantee that I would come back to life at all. Physically, I did come back to life. God healed my body, and it took 2 years for me to be where I am today, 2.5 years now. But God granted me a few more days, and I'm still here. However, what I came to discover is that the physical journey was grueling, but the emotional journey was far more painful and difficult than I could have imagined. Because when you have to face your mortality and you face your body looking and acting differently than it did. So I live with this kind of permanent disability. I struggle to eat and swallow, and I choke on a daily basis, and obviously my speech is different. So when you have to live with that kind of permanent marking, it does impact how you see yourself and how you interact with the world. I mean, when I go to the grocery store and people hear me talk with a lisp and kind of a different sound, they make all kinds of conclusions about who I am based on how I sound. In the summer, when I'm wearing shorts and tank tops and people see the scars, they notice those. We tend to pay attention to things that are different. But what I came to discover is that what was now on my outside was on my insides long before that. And all this scarring and this brokenness and this disability, the truth is now it was basically something I couldn't hide. But the reality is I was broken and struggling with a disability, a heart disability, a mind disability, long before my outsides had that. And boy, that's hard to come to terms with. And so God has really, over the last year especially, and Deb, thank you for that. You're a blessing to me as well. What God has shown me over the last year, he's been really working with me to basically strip me of all the false sources of security and identity that I had relied on, and to get back to him. And the first part of that is creation, to get back to this idea of the fact that we were created. We are intentional creations of a loving creator. And I've heard that since I started going to church at like 9 months old, but that doesn't mean it had sunk in with me. Let me give you an example. When I was 15 years old, my parents took a family vacation to the Grand Tetons in Yellowstone. It was my brother, my mom, and my dad, and we just did this like 1.5, 2 week vacation to the Yellowstone and to the Grand Tetons. And it was a great trip, but there was one moment in particular that was a highlight for me. And it's when we stumbled upon this lake in the Grand Tetons called Jenny Lake. I wrote about this in the first chapter in I Am the Creation, the first part, Creation, I Am Created. But Jenny Lake was stunning, absolutely stunning. The water is pristine and crystal clear. And then behind the lake is the Grand Tetons. So it's, I live in the Rocky Mountains, for crying out loud. I see mountains every day, but the Grand Tetons are something else entirely. It's just absolutely spectacular. Get online later and look at some pictures. It's just amazing. So I remember standing at Jenny Lake. I was 15 years old. My feet were right at the shoreline. It was way too cold to put your feet in. But standing there at the shoreline, looking at this incredible lake at the base of the Grand Tetons. And in that moment, I knew, even at 15, I was like, there is a God and he made this. There is a God and he made this. This is spectacular. And I felt such a connection with the Creator and his creation. And I knew he was there. Now, since I've come home, in the years following, I've done a little bit of research to find out how Jenny Lake came to be. And what I discovered is that geologists believe that thousands of years ago, during the Ice Age, glaciers came down and carved out depressions in the mountains. So these glaciers came down thousands of years ago and basically cut or carved these deep depressions in the rock. Some of these depressions are more than 250 feet deep. That's pretty stinking deep. And then water filled in. So mountain water, melted snow, filled in these deep depressions and created Jenny Lake. Okay. And that's how it came to be. And so I then had even more wonder and amazement at the fact that Jenny Lake, as beautiful as it is, it took thousands of years for it to be created. And it required glaciers to cut through the rock to make that happen. Now, the truth is I stand with my toes at the shore of another creation every single day, myself. I stand in my bathroom mirror. I did it earlier this morning to fix my hair for you. And I stood at the shore of that creation today, like I do every single day. But when I stand at the base of that creation, I don't feel wonder. I don't feel this amazement at God's creation. I cringe. When I look at myself so many times, not all the time, but so many times when I look at myself in the mirror, I feel a sense of regret or disappointment. And I'm not talking just about my appearance. Of course, those of us women struggle with that all the time. But I look at the person I am. I look at the 46 years of my life and the things that I wish I would have done differently. The mistakes that I've made, my failures as a wife and a mom or a friend or whatever. I think of all the different ways that my life hasn't turned out quite like I thought I would. And so rather than wonder, I feel disappointment. But here's the deal. The miracle of my life and the miracle of my creation even supersedes Jenny Lake and the Grand Tetons. The Bible says that God made us just a little lower than the heavenly beings, that even the angels marvel at our human creation. We are created by the same God that carved out Jenny Lake. And the truth is that it took thousands of years and actually hardship for glaciers to cut out rock to create Jenny Lake. Okay, so that's, in a sense, that's pain. That's pain, suffering, hardship. It took tension and conflict for these glaciers to cut through the rock and create what I stood at the shore and marveled at. So why wouldn't God do the same with you and me? He uses the unexpected circumstances and the pain and the heartache and all of that, to carve out depressions in our life at some times, carve out the rock in our lives and create a depth that could then hold his living water and make something marvelous to look at. That's what's so incredible about this. So what if you and I recaptured the wonder of our creation? What if you and I intentionally stopped looking at ourselves and looking at what we don't like, and instead realized that from the moment that we were knit together in our mother's womb, the moment that God put us together, we were an intentional creation of his hands, that we are not an accident, and that throughout the course of our life, from creation to the end, from our first breath to our last breath, God is taking his intentional creation and he's carving out even more miraculous, beautiful expressions of his glory in our life. That we aren't just a series of bad mistakes and regrets and disappointments and unexpected scenarios, that we are held in the palm of our Father's hand, created by him, and destined to be an expression of his glory. If we could only open our eyes to see that. So that's what I want. First of all, I want there are two steps to this creation part of our story. One, to develop wonder at the Creator, to start to marvel at this God, this Creator God who has created everything around us. I mean, you and I, we go outside and we appreciate nature, but we need to also appreciate what he's done with us. Do you realize what a miracle it is that you actually woke up this morning and can watch this video and hear this video? That you are so wonderfully created that it is a miracle that we can even do this, all right? So to develop wonder at the Creator and what he has done, but also to develop wonder at the creation. And not just what you see when you go out for a walk, but what you see when you look in the mirror. The creation of you. In my book, I Am, this is on page 29. If you have your book, you can read along, but I'm just going to read a section before we close up here. This is page 29. When you and I look in the mirror and struggle to see evidence of a marvelous creation, it's simply because we're catching a glimpse of a work in progress. But in spite of our many flaws, we remain a creation of a masterful God who has nothing but affection for his work of art and anticipates its completion. You stand on the shore and marvel at what he has done, what he is doing. Allow yourself to be wooed by glory. And if you quiet yourself just enough, you might hear him whisper in your ear, I made you, dear child. I made you. All right, so I have a task for you today. This is your homework for today. I'm going to turn my computer so you can see something I have posted over here. It's going to be backwards because, you know, that's just the way it works. Oh, it's not backwards. Look at that. It's perfect, I think. All right, so what we're going to do over the next six weeks is do your 6-part story. So remember I told you I wanted you to have a piece of paper. Okay, I wanted you to have a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper or a poster board. I decided to use a giant Post-it sticky note right there. That is it. What I want you to do is at the top of the page, put my 6-part story. And then I want you to basically make a grid underneath that has 6 boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pretty simple. And in that first top left box, I simply want you to write the word creation. Write the word creation. And then what I want you to do is in that 6-word or in that box for creation, this week, as you go through this week, I want you to start filling in words of ways that you are learning to develop wonder at the creation of your life. I want you to think about the ways that you are so uniquely created, how you are different than everybody else, how God made you absolutely unique. I want you to lean into this, and in that box, I want you to write down what God is starting to show you about the wonder of your creation. Now, earlier this morning on the Facebook group page, there was a post that told you to write your 6-word story. You could write your 6-word story right there in that creation box, okay? We're gonna come back to the 6-word story at the end of the 6 weeks, but I want you to write your 6-word story as you see it right now today in that creation box, okay? And it may not be pretty. It may be your 6-word story is a hard story because you are desperate to be accepted, that you are lonely, but you're longing to be accepted. That's a 6-word story. Well, I don't know if that's exactly 6 words, but that's a 6-word story. That may be where you are right here. So you start there at the creation where you are, but as we move through these 6 parts, you're going to see God unfolding your story. And that's what I want for you more than anything else. Okay, so that's your homework for this week, is to fill in that creation box and then write some specifics about what God is revealing to you about how you are uniquely created, intentionally created by Him. All right. The only other thing that I want you to do too is I want you to memorize these 6 parts, the 6-part story. So all you have to do this week is memorize creation as part number 1. Because by the end of the 6 weeks, I want you to have a narrative that roots you. And it's going to be those 6 parts of the book, the 6 parts of the gospel that are going to be your anchor from this day forward. And the first word to memorize is creation. All right. Just a reminder, Wednesday night, we have our Facebook Live Identity Unplugged interview with a special guest. Are you ready for the special guest for this week? I love my special guests because they're my friends. So many of you won't be surprised that my first special guest is my very, very good friend, like one of my besties, the author speaker, Kathy Lipp. So Kathy Lipp will be with us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, so 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And for those of you around the world, I have no idea. So we'll have to use your time zone helper online, or just come back and watch the video once it's recorded. But she is our special guest. We will be back here tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Mountain Time to do our Identity Unplugged. This Identity Unplugged is casual. We will be in our sweatpants, yoga pants, basically as is. We want you to come the same way, so grab your favorite beverage and join us. I love seeing everybody excited about Kathy Lipp. Yay! So fun. And then just make sure you continue to check into our Facebook group throughout the day. We will be posting throughout the day, Monday through Friday. We want to hear from you and where you're at this journey. Remember, the more you interact with it, the more it's going to plant itself deep in your heart and create true transformation. The Spirit is at work, transforming you, carving those deep depressions in the landscape of your life to create an absolutely marvelous expression of the glory of God. Father God, I just pray over all of us now. Thank you for bringing us together, for walking us through this journey, for loving us enough to want to set us free. Set us free, God. Set us free. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. I love you, friends. See you next time.